They're circling the wagons around a guy who should never have been here, who lied to get a student visa. Then he's getting a green card and got one. Then he wanted to be a citizen. And his objective, the group's objective, is the overthrow of the United States of America. Now, immigration is supposed to be to invite people into the country who are going to contribute to the country, who are going to leave their homeland for reasons that they needed to leave it or wanted to leave it, to assimilate into the American culture, not to overthrow our country, for God's sakes. And these fools, these buffoons, are defending them. And so here's this guy, this lawyer, and he's outstanding, and his name is Mark Goldfeder. And here he is taking a civil case against Khalil and these people, and he's coming up with all this evidence. But there he is at CNN because they want to try and humiliate him. But he humiliates Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper was a mouthpiece Hamas, mouthpiece for them, a mouthpiece spewing out their data about casualties. Even Hamas had to correct itself, but Jake Tapper still hasn't corrected himself. Jake Tapper wrote a book. You notice he's not promoting it. All the reporters who were covering up for Biden, and then people were bringing out quotes and videos of him covering up for Biden. Oops, forget about my book. Maybe he wrote it, maybe he didn't, but he was going to be a laughingstock even bigger than he currently is. But let's look at this exchange. Go.
The sense of entitlement here is disgusting. First of all, absolutely clear. The U.S. Supreme Court has already held that a charitable organization, including specifically a university, can lose its tax-exempt status if they are violating fundamental policy. That was Bob Jones University versus the U.S. in 1983. They lost their tax-exempt status because their racist, discriminatory policies were contrary to a compelling governmental interest and to public policy. Harvard has said they will not comply with what the federal government says they need to as it relates to enforcing non-discrimination policies. Of course, they can lose their federal exempt tax status. I've read through the letter that the task force sent to Harvard, and all they're asking is to come up with solutions to its own problems. What's Harvard's?
Now, hold on a second. See how the young lady on the left looks very ticked off. Even talked over him, but of course they had her mic off. And she is the granddaughter of Herbert Hoover. Her name is Hoover. I forget her first name. I think it's Margaret Hoover or something. She's married to some schmuck who used to be a Republican, used to work for Rudy Giuliani, then became an independent member. No labels. Well, you're an a-hole, that's a label. No labels. And then he ran as a Democrat last election or two for Congress, and he lost. So he's Mr. No Labels, she's a Hoover, and this guy who actually knows what he's talking about is litigating this case. They have nothing but contempt for him. Look, they're circling the wagons around a guy who should never have been here, who lied to get a student visa. Then he's getting a green card and got one. Then he wanted to be a citizen. And his objective, the group's objective, is the overthrow of the United States of America. Now, immigration is supposed to be to invite people into the country who are going to contribute to the country, who are going to leave their homeland for reasons that they needed to leave it or wanted to leave it, to assimilate into the American culture, not to overthrow our country, for God's sakes. And these fools, these buffoons, are defending them. Go ahead.
Fix it. It's not a huge ask. The reality here is that elite universities are undermining confidence in the entire sector. Jewish being harassed and assaulted, and elite university administrators have done nothing to stop it, including at Harvard. By the way, in the fair admissions case, Harvard came out with a statement a day later saying they were going to try to find ways around it so as not to comply with it. These universities are entitled, and they will not stop this behavior on their own accord. The only thing they seem to respond to is financial incentive. That seems to be the only lever that we can pull to stop the racist and anti-Semitic conduct on their campuses.
No, Mark, I just want to be Mark. I just, this John.
So the voice in the background there, he's the guy who's just his name is John Avalon, as I recall. He's been all three parties, or two parties and one non-party, and he's a hack. He's a hack. But listen to this question. Go ahead.
I just want to be real clear. You're comparing Harvard University to Bob Jones University, which lost its tax-exempt status because it forbid interracial dating. I just want to be clear. That's your official position, right? That's your argument?
That's right.
Super. That's going to go down real well. Sounds really equivalent. Why would you cut scientific funding? Why would you cut medical funding?
Okay, let's slow down. See how he mocks? Let me tell you about Avalon and these people. I guarantee you, if we weren't talking about Jews, but for example, if we were talking about blacks, he wouldn't have that stupid smirk on his face. He wouldn't think that this is ridiculous. His analogy, that is the attorney's analogy, was perfectly legitimate. You have Jewish kids on campus who are being violently threatened, who are being harmed, some cases running for their safety. That is very serious. If we had black kids on campus running for their safety, locking themselves in libraries, locking themselves in dorm rooms, having the local chapter of, say, the NAACP shut down, locking their doors, having pastors who support them, having to stay off campus, professors who support them, having their careers affected, you'd be hearing very different stories than you hear from this guy with his smirk on his face. And let me answer this. Yes, Bob Jones lost its tax-exempt status under Ronald Reagan, by the way, because it rejected interracial marriage. Here, we have on campuses people who are talking about the literal evisceration of the Jewish people. And this fool with the smirk on his face, oh, look, you think it's the same thing? Oh, that's super. You think that's going to fly? Sick. Go ahead.
Harvard has $53 billion in its endowment. Are they gaining that many students? Dip into your endowment or stop discriminating. Stop discriminating against Jews and nobody has to suffer. Or if you want to keep discriminating, you have plenty of money that you raised over the years. And anything that the U.S. cuts off, I'm sure Qatar will fill right in.
The point's important. Harvard has $53 billion in an endowment. People donate. It's tax exempt. Why is it sitting there? And his point is $2.2 billion. Do you know we give $2.2 billion a year to Harvard? All you hardworking people out there, this is the biggest of the Ivy League schools. They're sitting on tax-free $53 billion. That means they invest it, it keeps earning and earning. They're not paying 1 penny in taxes on it. But what are they doing with it? And the gentleman's point is, look, you're so worried about hospitals and research, why don't you use some of your $53 friggin' billion and do something about it? Why are Mr. and Mrs. America, almost none of whom go to Harvard, 2/3 of the American people never went to a 4-year college, 3/4 of Americans never graduated from a 4-year college, and we're subsidizing the highest of the Ivy League colleges? And on top of that, he's saying, look, all they have to do is stop with this DEI, which is racist. It's affirmative action through the back door, which has been ruled unconstitutional on multiple occasions by the Supreme Court. They just changed the name. And stop the anti-Semitism. Is this really so hard? And then the professors come out, you're attacking our autonomy. And he says, the gentleman, and I say too, well, then do it on your own. You don't get any tax money. I wrote this book, American Marxism. I made several suggestions at the back of the book, and one of them, defund the colleges and universities. You guys remember this? Mm-hmm. I said, defund them. What we say here 4, 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, somehow winds up resonating. And that's a good thing. In fact, when I wrote the book American Marxism, and I went on our favorite cable show and elsewhere, people kept talking, well, the progressives and the socialists. I said, stop it. They're Marxists. The president started to call them Marxists and communists. Now, people on TV and radio call them what they are, Marxists. Socialism is an economic construct. They're that too. But as Marx himself said, socialism is the last stage before Marxism. People are talking like Marxists more than socialists, and acting like Marxists more than socialists. Marxism is bigger than economics, even though it includes economics, obviously. Anyway, that was a disgrace. That guy Avalon's a disgrace. His wife's sitting there like a bobblehead, and Jake Tapper, he's a disgrace too. All of CNN and so forth. And no group, minority or majority, should be treated the way the Jews are being treated on these college campuses. Period. Nobody should be treated this way. It's wrong. And we have a president who is not Jewish, who is doing something about it more than anybody else in the country and more than any other president would. And he should be celebrated for it.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.